Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the stream. Today, I have been once more graciously invited to commentate in Felix's channel.
Hello, everyone.
And we will be covering,
Welcome back
to the stream. Again, the
today.
Sligo International Chess Open, or I guess it is formerly known as the Sligo Chess and Culture Festival, held from February 2nd to the 8th. This is also the 8th round of the tournament. Remind you that the tournament has 9 rounds, and that is actually a good time for me to check the standings because I believe Felix is up there, maybe like first or around there. We'll get to his last games in a couple of minutes. Okay, I cannot see the tournament. Okay, there we go. Exactly. So he is in clear first place with a margin of half a point above the second place player right now, who is Adams Collins from Ireland. Actually, he's been having a pretty good run, it seems. This player might even be on pace to making an IM norm, which, if you don't know, it's like a big thing for like aspiring chess players that already achieved the FM title, which is basically getting to 2300 FIDE rating. Around that moment is when you start looking at the possibility of making IM norms, and basically you need to reach 2400 and make 3 IM norms to make the IM title, which I recently achieved also last year. And then from there, you have to make 3 GM norms and get to 2500 to reach the almighty GM title, which is the highest chess honor one can have. Okay. So, have we gotten some moves yet or not? We have. So we are playing with the black pieces. Let me flip the board. And oof, this is tough. Okay, we are facing the dreaded 4 knights variation in the king's pawn opening. The reason why this is dreaded is that it seems, I could be wrong, but usually when the player with the white pieces goes for this, he's just trying to salvage a draw or a very equal type of position. Okay, with that said, he played bishop b5. So just to give a little bit of context, the main lines here are either the Spanish game, aka the Rue Lopez, which is the name that I prefer because it sort of gives credit to the person that founded it, so to speak, instead of it just being the name of the country. Then we have the Italian game. Actually, to this point, I don't know who created the Italian opening, but I assume it was an Italian player. There could also be a name for him. And the Scotch, which is d4. Then there is knight c3, which obviously is like a normal looking move, just developing the knight. But the thing is that after knight f6, the game does tend to have a pretty high drawish margin, especially if white goes for d4 now. And the reason for this, okay, like the reason why this leads to more drawish positions is just a bit concrete. Basically, if we follow like the best moves by far, we get to a position as such, d5, let's say white takes it, we take back, for example, and we reach this position, which is, yeah, in high level chess, or maybe like not even as high as GM, let's say, but above like 2100 or something. This is an opening that is sort of known to cause major headaches to the black player when he is trying to win. And of course, Felix having a 200 point, being rated 200 points above his opponent, is probably looking for a win in this game, I would assume. And he wants to avoid that. But white did not go for this d4 move, which is quite again, quite annoying to face. He went for bishop b5, which is basically the real Lopez, but with white having played knight c3. For example, this can also be reached via the Berlin move order. So this is the Berlin defense inside the Ruy Lopez complex. And white can go for knight c3. It's not really a popular move, but again, because the thing with the knight on c3, of course, like it's a very natural developing move, but it takes some flexibility away because the thing is that in a lot of these Spanish positions, white wants to go for plans related with pawn to c3, okay, and then trying to build up the center with d3 to d4. So putting the knight on c3 does take some flexibility away, but of course it is just a very normal equalish looking move. And Felix goes for this line with bishop d6. Again, trying to avoid major lines. I mean, it's still a big line, bishop d6, but trying to avoid the absolute main lines, which again have quite high drawish tendencies. So that would be like bishop b4. Again, keeping the game super symmetrical. And after something like this, let's say we take, go d6, white can do the same if he's really just trying to hold his balance. And it is quite hard to win a game like this that is so dry and so symmetrical as black. Instead of bishop b4, there's also this line knight d4, which again, by various means, can lead to a forced draw. For example, like this type of position, d takes c3. This is, again, super equalish. So instead, he goes for bishop d6 here. Arguably trying to keep some more imbalances in the game. d3, a6, bishop a4. And of course, this bishop on d6 looks rather clumsy. The idea, as far as I know, is to, let's just say we castle and white castles. The idea often is to go rook e8 and then park the bishop back on f8. And then the bishop will sort of find a nice home. And then we can follow up with natural looking moves. So let's just say white makes a completely random move like rook e1, bishop f8, and then we can follow up with d6, b5 if need be, or even if just if you want it. And then, okay, carry on with natural developing moves. And we get a position that could have very much came from a Ruy Lopez. Okay, so after bishop a4, he is thinking for a little while. There could be some move order nuances here about going h6 first and so on. Like if you castle, you always have to watch out for bishop g5 and have to consider whether or not you want to deal with this. For example, I guess the most natural thing would be bishop e7, but I'm not sure whether white can take on c6 then and take on e5. And yes, it seems that this is possible, but the line goes on, funny enough, because black has this move knight e4, which is quite interesting. And some sort of tactical flourish starts to happen. If white takes, we can take with a queen, then take the knight. If white ever tries to sneak in an intermezzo by taking on c6, we can do the same, take on c3. So this is kind of interesting. So it seems that we can perfectly allow this bishop to arrive on g5. But okay, my point was more that something like this always has to be evaluated. Oftentimes white can sacrifice, especially when the bishop, let's say this bishop was on a7 right now, and the pawn structure was sort of closed. Sacrificing often is an option, but also these types of positions are quite complicated and have to be pondered over and evaluated very seriously. Anyways, we get castles immediately, so sort of showing that he is not particularly afraid of this bishop g5 move. And my guess is just that we'll get a very sort of equal type of Spanish game. But if Felix manages to keep a lot of pieces on the board by the time that we get to the middle game, then he will have plenty of chances to outplay his perhaps weaker opponent. Big perhaps, because he seems to be playing quite well this tournament. His opponent, that is, well, Felix has also been playing rather well, and we might get to look at some of his games in just a little bit. Hello, Chad. How are you doing? Yes, I'm back for today. It seems that the is looking like the weather is looking rather nice today in Sligo, from what we can see in the camera. It seems that the leaves and the grass is rather green, and there's a lot of sunlight coming in, which I guess that is not so doesn't happen so often over there in the northern countries. So what do we get? I believe White is still thinking. Yeah, after castles. I believe White has castled in the live feed, and Felix has played rook e8. Okay. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that the live feed is more up to speed than the board on Lee Chess, because there is a transmission delay of 15 minutes. Sometimes the organizers institute that to try and like mitigate issues related to cheating and so on. And it seems that this is the live position as far as I can tell. So once more, Felix doesn't seem to be too concerned about bishop g5. Now, I was kind of curious as to the computer was giving a slight advantage to this idea of giving up the bishop on f6, which looks rather strange. And then he just wants to follow up with some move like c3. But this is very weird because, yeah, I don't really know if this is something that either player is going to consider at all. Seems very computerish to just give away the bishop pair like this and just claim that white is slightly better. Um, yeah, this is definitely beyond my understanding. I don't think that this is going to happen at all. And white has played a3, as a matter of fact. Oh, so the game must have been this. a3, rook e8, and now white castled. But it is still black to move, so maybe... I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but this move a3 is a bit weird, though. Oh, I get it. So he wants to... Yeah, it makes sense, actually. It's not weird. What white is trying to do is make it so that the bishop will have an escape square on a2, because let's say white castles. Yeah, that is sort of a question, like, can we go b5 followed by knight a5? I mean, there could be some problems sometimes with like bishop d5, knight takes, pawn takes, and this knight ending up stranded on a5. But here, if bishop d5, we can just boot it away with c6 and then take it on b3 anyways. I mean, it is very desirable for black in these positions to take on b3. Like, first, because we're just getting the bishop pair, but secondly, and most importantly, um, this light squared bishop is like the soul of the Rue Lopez and the Italian. Like, this has been talked about so much, but this bishop is really key in these lines. It's just eyeing down in this diagonal, and it is very strong. It is typically stronger than this bishop on c1. For example, Bobby Fischer used to play extremely well with this light squared bishop. Not only in the Spanishes, but in general. It was sort of a trademark of his play. At any rate, it seems that there could be some concrete issues here if black were to go for this, related to bishop g5. I'm still not so sure how scared I am of this, but if we like take the bishop now and takes, the thing is that now white threatens knight b5, right? Utilizing this pin here. And also there's ideas of knight d5 coming in to exploit this knight. So this could be something. At the same time, the computer just brushes it off with bishop b7, which anyways is a very natural move, and we're just ready to chop the knight if it lands on d5. So, I mean, I guess there's still some sort of complicated lines here, like d4. Again, quite concrete, yeah, quite concrete, and it is completely understandable that white, having not known this position beforehand, didn't see a good reason as to why he would part ways with this light squared bishop, so he chooses to go for this a3 move. Okay, so yeah, Felix will have a lot of choices here. I feel like he already played rook e8, which makes perfect sense. And after rook e8, black is finally free to move his bishop somewhere. We can go to f8, we can go to c5, which is more of an active square. And we can always choose to throw in b5. And again, it's a very kind of standard position in the for Lopez. But overall, it's kind of a success in the sense that not a lot of pieces were traded, and the game is just complicated. And these struggles, unbalanced struggles, tend to favor the stronger player. Okay. Also, the German Bundesliga is going on today, right? That's always like an exciting event, especially when these elite players don't want to make quick draws. And yeah, I guess that there's a couple, but a lot of players do go into the Bundesliga trying to win. The the Schach Bundesliga in Germany is probably the strongest league chess wise out there. Not only in Europe, I would say, but like everywhere around the world. It is extremely strong. Every time it is going on, lots of players like um, in the likes of Caruana or I don't know, Nakamura or other 2700s, they all gather around to play. Um, like there's lots of uh, good conditions for the players, and yeah, they're incentivized to really play in this event, and it's very nice because I think that it usually happens on some weekends, and it's scattered throughout like the whole calendar year. So it's not like a one-time event where all the rounds take place and then the tournament ends. It sort of goes well, it's like a football league, right? It just goes it just happens throughout the whole year. And it is very exciting to see the games, and also a lot of interesting opening novelties get played since the competition is so strong. But of course, like when I scroll through the games just looking at the evaluation bar, like 95% of them reside in the exact middle because yeah, when you get lots of strong chess players playing against each other, especially if it's not a knockout event, you'll just get lots and lots of draws. Hmm. Okay. So what do we get? So we still haven't gotten any moves, but I'm pretty sure that I see a rook on e8 in the live position. Also, the Speed Chess Championship is going on today, right? There's a lot of chess events going on today. And Magnus is leading 11.5 to 5.5. Okay. Also, in more chess related news, a documentary by Judith Polgar came out yesterday, I think, um, called "The Queen of Chess," I believe, and I'm quite excited to see that. Quite excited to take a look at that. Of course, the Queen's Gambit is what brought like 80% of the population currently playing chess into the game, but this is yeah, a very different type of um of show as far as I can understand. Like it's again, it's a documentary. It's not like a made up story. Um, yeah, Bobby Fischer's movie. I watched that one. I didn't really like it. I have to be honest. I felt like Toby Maguire didn't really fit the role very well. That role in particular. For example, he did quite well, of course, in the Spider-Man movies and so on, but I didn't feel that he was so believable portraying Bobby Fischer. I mean, Bobby Fischer was just a ferocious beast. Like the way he carried himself, he was very tall as well, and just sort of imminent at the chessboard. But um, but anyways, I do have to get my eyes on this documentary. Okay, so we did get this rook e8, and again, the bishop can go to f8 or go to c5. I predict that this game will be quite long because the yeah, this Rue Lopez in general is an opening that takes a lot of positional maneuvering and sort of grinding down the opponent little by little, as opposed to something that Felix has also played in this tournament twice, I believe already, like the Sicilian Najdorf, where you can see that there's a clear imbalance in the pawn structure already, even in the initial position of the variation. And oftentimes, players castle on opposite flanks, and we get these hectic attacks against each other. And yeah, let's say that mistakes are bound to happen much more quickly, much sooner. But in a game like the Rue Lopez, which by the way is my favorite opening in all of chess, the Rue Lopez. I love how complex it is and like how there's so many possibilities for each side. There's so many different ways to treat it and to play it. But yeah, this is my favorite opening in like all of chess. I've played this from both colors, and I've especially played this with white like a lot ever since I was a kid. Anyways, that's my rant about that. But it is a very long, grindy type of opening. Okay, let me take a quick look at the other boards. So, oh, I just realized that today's game is probably going to decide. I mean, it has the potential to decide the winner of the tournament because Felix is on 6 out of 7, clear first, and then Adam Collins, who is facing right now, is on 5.5 out of 7, and he is clear second. Yeah, exactly. So if Felix wins his game today, if the League Chess tournament, if the League Chess like overview of the standings is correct, if Felix wins his game today, he is already the champion of the Sligo Chess and Culture Festival 2026. Again, these standings could be wrong, but I don't think they are because everything seems correct. And yeah, all of the boards are transmitted because the only problem is like the standings on Lichess tend to be incorrect when some of the boards are not transmitted. And because it only takes into account the results from the transmitted, like the DGT transmitted boards, um, when you play, let's say that I play in a board that is not being broadcasted and I win, that point does not show up in the standings of Elite Chess. So that's why usually like using chess results is much more reliable. But at any rate, all of the boards here in this particular tournament are being broadcasted, so all of the points are being taken into account. So yeah. Long story short, if Felix wins, he will already win the tournament without even having to play the last round. Although I've never seen that happen, like someone win the tournament before the last round and just not showing up on the last day. That would be cruel. Also, what even happens there? Because like you get forfeited. I believe that if you don't show up like inadvertently to two games in a given tournament, you get expelled from the tournament. But I don't know what would happen in that situation. Anyways, I've never seen that happen. Um, okay. What was the Queen's Gambit to just a hoax or real? Not sure. Hello, Peter. Not sure. I haven't heard anything about that. A Queen's Gambit 2. I really like the decision of Bishop D6 by Felix. D6, Bishop E7 is better. Yeah, again, he's just trying to get his opponent a bit off his theory, a bit off his comfort zone. And the truth is that White hasn't gotten absolutely anything out of this opening. So, in terms of playing for an advantage, I wouldn't really advise this at all. But I do think that White's just trying to keep the game sort of tame and equalish because he's playing a much higher rated opponent. And yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest. This is one of the reasons why I almost never play E7, E5 against lower rated opponents. And this might seem very exaggerated, but I'm um like believe me when I say that I don't know what to do against the four knights, especially in particular this one with D4. This the four knights scotch as they call it. I don't know what to do against this at all. There was some suggestion by Gawain Jones in his course that was sort of interesting. Again, when we go through this huge line at some point, no, he doesn't want to go d5. I think he wants to go like castles, castles, and now probably rook e8, I believe, with the idea of bishop g5, h6, and then g5, just lashing out like this, or maybe it's d5 first. Could be d5 first, takes, and now g5 this. But I mean, first of all, this is not really my style. Just weakening my position, my king side like this, that much. Not really my cup of tea. And secondly, I'm not really sure why we did this. I mean, the only reason that I can think of is that we didn't like bow down and accept like a forced draw, but that's not strong enough of a reason. So like, I really don't know what to do against this at all. Okay, fun story. A couple of years ago. Okay, this is a very um, big coincidence. So I played in this open in the island of Tenerife in Spain in 2024, and I recently found out that that Felix was also playing there. So like I didn't know or even had heard of him at the time. He was also playing there, and that was the first tournament that he covered, like with recaps in his channel on YouTube. So the very first videos, his very first YouTube videos on this channel were about that tournament in Tenerife. And so in that tournament, I was trying to make my last IM norm already, and I was very, very close. In the last round, I needed to win against a 2300 opponent, and I played this crazy gambit as black because I really wanted to get it an unbalanced game and score a win. And I played this crazy gambit. I had a lot of preparation, but he held his own, and we just made a draw. which wasn't enough, so I didn't make the norm. The tournament was still all right. It was also one of the most like interesting and fun tournaments that I've ever played because I just love playing around the beach and so on, and um, sort of these coastal cities with the beach and the sea and so on. Like I just always love this vibe. Anyways, so in this tournament, maybe in round 6 or 7, around that moment, I got paired up against none other than Atosa. I don't know what her surname is, but more uh, well known as Hikaru Nakamura's wife. I don't think they were married at the time already, or maybe they were, not sure. But I got paired up against her, and she always like I looked at her games in the database, and she always played the Spanish, right, with Bishop B5. And okay, I prepared something. We get to the board. I mean, I didn't really used to play E5 at the time. I mean, I still kind of don't. So I guess she was sort of surprised. And so we get to the board, and she just blitzes up knight f3, knight c6, knight c3. Like, mind you, she had no games on this at all. Maybe like 70 something games with bishop b5 and like 2 or 3 games with knight c3. But she just blitzes out knight c3. And again, I didn't want to go for this crap. I thought she was going to go for this drawish line. So I thought and I thought, and I played just this crap. But this is a highly dubious line. Highly dubious line. White just gets the whole center. And this kind of thing is just highly dubious. So the game was pretty tough. I was worse for the majority of it. And eventually, like, I swindled her. And I don't even remember how, but I do remember it was a swindle because at some point I was just dead lost. And that was sort of the breaking point for me. After that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm never playing e5 um, below um, when playing below my rating again. Again, could be a little bit exaggerated, but now I like almost exclusively play the the Sicilian, usually like knight or for the time auto variation, or the Caro-Kann also sometimes. Um, okay. Yeah, play the Ruy Lopez. People say the opening is boring or something. I don't know. Yeah, no, the Ruy Lopez is fine. Again, it's sort of a more calm type of game, positional and so on, but not necessarily boring. Like these 2 knights or like 4 knights positions, I feel like do tend to be quite boring. Queen's Gambit 2 about the Plotter sisters would be nice. Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if the documentary covers, like, I don't know what it is focused on. I mean, I guess it's about Judith or Judith. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but I'm not sure how much in depth it goes about her sisters as well, and like her father and so on. The whole family. I think that it was quite a different type of family, right? Um, her father and everything was sort of uh, I don't know, kind of, I don't know how to describe, like, I'm an exquisite type of man or something like this. But yeah, I would like to know more about her sisters actually as well, because I think they're also like highly distinguished in their areas. I think like Susan, for example, I'm not sure if it's Susan, but one of her sisters is also a lawyer, as well as either an IM or GM in chess, which is crazy, just remarkable. Okay, see you, man. I'm curious if with the bishop on d6, Felix will try to play h5 at one point. Um, I don't really feel that that is in the spirit of the position. Going h5 in these types of positions. Um, I mean, I've even seen sometimes people going like, let's say white goes h3. I've even seen them going like g5, like completely unprovoked sometimes. But again, the bishop would probably be much better placed here on f8 to do these, to go into these types of endeavors. So yeah, this is not really a position where any side is trying to attack the other. I mean, yeah, black's going to retreat the bishop. So let's say, like, let's put some natural moves on the board. Black just played h6. I mean, at some point, this bishop will threaten to go to g4. So let's say white goes h3. We move the bishop back. We can also put it on c5. I'm not really sure where we want to put it. Is there any problem with putting it on c5? Probably not. You do always have to take this into account, but okay, it's just a very natural, very normal type of decision in these positions. Do you trade? Do you not trade? Sometimes they even go for d6. Like, let's say b5 here is not possible because we're taking on c5, but let's say we get this position, like even d6 would be possible. Oh, and I see that we actually transpose into some game by two very strong players. So this kind of thing would be possible, but not here because, well, actually d6 here. I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem so great. We're just accepting these tripled pawns, and this is just a pretty bad structure. So yeah, if we were to get here, black would probably be taking on e3, and I'm just not sure that's something that he wants to do. It gives white some attacking prospects, some more central control. I mean, again, it's a very, very standard type of position, but I guess that if I were black, I would go bishop f8 pretty quickly. And after white goes, let's say, what would be natural here for white to play? Like knight e2 to g3, maybe bishop e3 as well, could be. And okay, this is actually pretty instructive. Well, could be. The computer was pointing out this move knight e5 here to try and get this bishop with b5, but I'm just not so sure what we're doing against b4. Is the point still to go b5 or what? Interesting. So he still wants to go b5, but now we're sacrificing a pawn here on a4, right? I guess that we're just getting d5 with lots of play, right? Yeah. Interesting. Exhilarating stuff that will never see the light of day because these lines are a bit too obscure. Okay, so white played the immediate bishop e3. Again, bishop f8 will most likely be played. Has already been played. And black is probably going to play either d6 next or b5. I'm not really sure if you want to go b5. I mean, like, in general, going b5 in these real low pass positions is very natural, but it is sort of what white wants. I mean, if we try to understand the opening in sort of a higher depth, why do we go bishop b5 and not bishop c4, right? Because bishop c4 is by far the most natural move, because you could make an argument that, okay, bishop b5 threatens to win a pawn by taking and take on e5, but that's not true, right? That is not true. Let's say, like, after e6, white can take on c6, but not with the idea of taking on e5. This is sort of well known, right? Black has queen d4, and the pawn is regained. So my point is that what white aims with this bishop b5 move is that he will, after consolidating, like going d3 in castles, he will later threaten to take on c6 and win this pawn. And so he is often inducing black to go b5. And the problem with this, with going b5 in general, is that they are creating what is called a hook, right? So after we go a4, we create this pawn tension that black cannot really resolve favorably. I mean, because if he takes, let me put this on a board, like something like this. a4 at some point. I mean, okay, let's just say we defend this spawn. We get some position like this. This is a very theoretical position as well. But the thing is that black never wants to take, because we just take with some piece, and then we have pressure against this isolated pawn on a6. He can go b4. It's the main move as well, but it does carry some sort of a concession, because now the c4 squares gain for the knight, which is kind of helpful. And then the other thing black can do is go bishop b7, just sort of maintaining the status quo. But anyways, it is very useful in general to create this tension with the pawns, where we can choose and decide when we want to resolve it, or when we want to break the tension. But our opponent cannot do it in the same way. Like, he's never able to just trade these pawns. So that's all to say. That's all to explain a bit the point behind the real Lopez. And if you keep that in mind, then what I'm saying is that maybe black doesn't want to go b5 here, because he doesn't have to. There's no problems with d5 pawn anymore. So maybe we can just forego playing b5 altogether and just play d6, like bishop b3, d6, and just play without b5 entirely. Something like this. Yeah, this might be the game continuation. Again, bishop e6, the problem with these kinds of moves, I mean, bishop e6 clearly looks best, because we're just getting this piece into the game, trading white's best piece, and so on. I believe the game might even continue like this. But the problem with this in general for black, the only problem is that black is trying to win the game. Because in terms of equalizing, like if this were a game between two 2,700 players, I mean, black would already be like thrilled, like at the board, sort of twitching and so on. Like, he couldn't believe how good his position is. But for a player who's really trying to score a win, this is not. I mean, it's dry. It's just a dry position. It's still obviously like there's chances to outplay him. I feel like the game might take this this shape. I mean, bishop b3 clearly looks like the most sensible move now, just getting the bishop back into life. Also, black does have ideas of going d5. I'm not so sure how realistic this is. It seems like an idea. Let's say white goes like rook e1 or something. Yeah, d5 could be an idea. This is also sort of an important concept that black, the general consensus is that black is able to break with d5 in these real Lopez positions, then he's doing fine. Because as compared to going d6, d5 opens up the board much more and gives much more activity to our pieces. So d5 is preferable if we can do it. And here, the only thing, like, I guess that what we'll do is this, and then at some point retreat. We will just retreat as well, and then we can think about this or this. So this would be an ideal scenario for black, which white should avoid. And okay, he has played bishop to b3. So now d6 will be blitzed out most probably. And then black has his ideas of going bishop h3, which we probably want to avoid. I mean, we don't have to, but I guess that we do want to avoid this at some point. But yeah, we don't like strictly have to, because it's not really a threat to take on f3 here anyways. I feel like a good concept to explain is that it is very common for beginner players to just go for this pin immediately. We have to be a bit careful to think about where our bishop will end up, because either we want to take here on f3, so that's one thing, but clearly we don't here, because we're just gifting him the bishop pair. The only justification, I guess, would be to get it back by doing this. But the problem with this is that now you can really see the full power of white's light squared bishop, because okay, we have completely sabotaged our own bishop, and white's pieces are doing great along the light square. So this is terrible. And if we don't want to do knight d4, then we just gifted him the bishop pair for free. So what I'm saying is we have to be careful about these pins because taking would not be logical. So I guess we drop back. But what happens with this type of situation is that the bishop ends up quite far away from the action here. So it was actually much better off in this diagonal than over here on h5, where it's not really doing much. And yeah, unless we're gaining some strong initiative related to this pin, which is not the case here, then the pin actually doesn't favor us at all. So yeah, h3, it's not the only move, but I can see here that it's the only move that has ever been played actually in the database, but it's not the only sensible move. Okay. Let me see in the video feed if they have made more moves. Yeah, white has played h3. Black has played d6. Is that our current position? Oh, and Felix is thinking. Okay, so yeah, his opponent went h3, and now Felix is just thinking. Again, he's probably foreseeing that bishop e6 looks too dryish, and he's trying to, investigate whether he has some other opportunities or not. Okay, I gotta mention the computer is coming up with this move a5, which has never seen the light of day in a practical game in this database. Someone please explain to me what the hell this move is all about. Because black is never going to go b5. I mean a4. And we're just giving him this square for free because, like, why are we doing this? Yeah, this is never going to be played. Yeah, bishop e6, as we mentioned. Also knight e7 to g6 is a very natural maneuver. Again, I guess that white can force the issue here with d4 if he really wants to. And let's say something like this is going to be excruciatingly hard to win. Borderline, I don't want to say impossible, but very hard. I feel like bishop e6, just by excluding the other moves, you end up on like being sort of content with bishop e6. Probably you take with the f pawn here just to create some sort of imbalance, and you take it slowly from here. Knight e2, d5, knight g3, and yeah. Also notice that these pawns often create this illusion of being very strong and connected and powerful. And black's center is quite beefy, let's say, but the problem with the doubled pawns in general is that they lack mobility. So the most intelligent thing white can do here is to not pay attention to them, just defend this pawn e4. And now black meets his problem, which is that if he takes on e4, this is very bad structurally because now he ends up with these two terrible pawns. And if he goes d4, the bishop just drops back. And again, the pawns have lost a lot of mobility, and they have to be guarded, like this pawn on e5, and the squares behind them just became weaker, like the squares c4 and so on. So the best course of action here for black is just to not do anything about the pawns, like not touch them and just play something else. But that's the problem, right? The pawns lost their mobility, even though they seem so well placed and sort of aggressively placed. Okay, let's take a look at some more games. So board 3 looks like this. Where did this came from? This came from a English opening. You'll notice that it has a lot of resemblances with the Sicilian opening because it's literally the Sicilian, like, reversed with reversed colors. So this is the Sicilian and this is the English opening. So like it's literally a Sicilian where white is a tempo up. So what did we get? You got some line like this. Okay, so white got rid of his bishop on f6, and he goes h4. This is very standard. So white is just carving out squares for this knight on f4. Now he goes knight b6, and white's choosing what to do with his life. Yeah, g3 is a natural move, but there's many natural moves in this position. You just have to make your choice and live with it. But white is definitely better there. Board 4, we get a Pirt again. I remember that Felix said that this opponent that he already faced always goes for the Pirt. Okay, we got something. E5. And yeah, white is just typically better in these positions. The knight will hop around to 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 b3 or to c4. Yeah, white can also consider throwing in c3 here just to break the structure a bit loose. I mean, white is just typically better in these Pete's positions in general. It's just something that black sort of agrees to do when he goes 1d6, and he'll try to create a game from there. Okay, on this board, we get some sort of drawish kind of opening. Okay, I just realized something, guys. I was really not understanding before the stream started why Alexander Krastev, who is like the third, I think he's third in the standings right now, why he's playing in board 16 instead of board 2 or 3. And I think that must be because his opponent is Zachary Sane, and because he's a YouTuber, I believe his board must be fixed. I believe that must be the reason why he's playing in such a low board. Because with his amount of points in this tournament, and with his overall um, position in the standings, he shouldn't really be playing this low. But okay, we got a French. I also saw Zach play this against Tatev Abrahamian in the Open of Sevilla a couple of weeks ago. Okay, let's move with knight c6. Never seen this. I guess it's just a move. I guess it is just a playable move, and of course these exchange French type positions are very trash. Much more than our dear game. So how are we doing time-wise? I've noticed that Felix is a player that is very steady when it comes to time management. Like, it is very rare that he'll start blitzing out moves. It's also quite rare that he'll go for long things. He usually keeps this pace of around like 5 minutes per move, which is something that I've noticed that GMs are just better at doing. And it's funny, I'm trying to improve on this as well in my own play. And I really do think of it like running a marathon. Like nowadays, running has become extremely popular for some reason. Like people are just posting their stuff on Strava and everything, like their laps and their paces and their time lapses and so on. And I really try to use this metaphor of think about it as running a race or a marathon, where you're trying to keep a certain pace at the chessboard. So like you rarely want to go for things longer than 15 minutes. Like for example, in my case, if I'm thinking about a move for more than 15 minutes, it is not because I'm trying to calculate some obscure lines. It is because I haven't come to terms with any moves, and I'm starting to lose the thread. and I can tell that quite clearly about my game. Like whenever I go uh, for things of more than like 15 to 20 minutes, I'll just usually just make a really bad move. And yeah, opposed to that, lately I've been trying to keep a pace of like, yeah, 3 to 5 minutes per move, and occasionally go for sort of 10-minute things around that when need when I really need to. But the thing is that in most positions are not critical throughout your chess game. Like you'll get a couple, like a handful of critical positions in a game, and apart from that, um, you should just play on your intuition, like calculate a bit. Of course, that's what classical is for. We shouldn't just rely solely in our intuition at all, but also like don't overcomplicate things, which is something that I am quite prone to doing. So we get b5. Interesting. So we were talking earlier about this concept of the hook and so on, and the idea of the Lopez is to provoke black into creating this hook and so on. But Felix is going for b5, and I am 99% sure that he'll tell you in the recap that he understood that bishop e6 is the best move, but he wanted to create some more imbalances, so he chose to go b5, keeping more pieces on the board and so on. So what is black's next course of action? He's gonna go knight a5, followed by c5, and then come back with the knight and go from there. Eventually bishop e6, but basically these pawns, these pawns here are just gaining space on the queen side, and black is hoping to create some play over there. And it throws the ball into white's court, so he has to come up with something. Okay, knight d5 is a very natural move. Might be played. It will get answered with knight a5. This position actually is rather similar to this line where oh wow, a game from a good friend of mine and countryman has shown up in the database. Interesting. But what was I saying? Yeah, this position greatly reminds me of this line that was very popular a couple of years ago. Like I've played it, some people have played it against me as well over the board. It was extremely popular a couple of years ago when I don't know who popularized it, but basically this line with white going a3, like for an early a3 in the Spanish, and then having this placement of the pieces. The bishop was back here on c1, the rook was on e1 perhaps, not sure, and black had bishop e7, rook f8. I could probably even put this on the board. So bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. I believe it was d3. Yeah, it was d3. And now b5, bishop, d6, and now this move a3, castles, knight c3. And now what did black do? Knight a5 and bishop e6, right? Yeah, this was the line. This was very popular a couple of years ago. And white typically goes b4 here. This was like mainstream theory. There's still like a couple hundreds of games in the database by very strong players. Takes, and now you could take with the rook over the knight. There exist both of the lines, and yeah, something like this. There was even a very famous draw. Yeah, it was around this point, right? With knight g4, bishop d2, knight f6, and this draw. A funny story, like I've gotten this position over the board once, like in a rapid game against a very strong player from Portugal, Andre Souza, an international master as well. And I went for knight h5. I don't know why. I think I was just sort of brain dead around this point because there's really no good argument to not go knight g4, which just stops bishop e3. So I went here, he went here, I went knight f6, but this is just the main line improved because like in this repetition, white is forced to go to d2 if he wants to avoid the swap of the bishops. But here he's just going to e3. It's a very minute difference, but it's just a stupid thing for black to do. So anyways, as you can see, this position here is quite similar to what we have around here. Or sorry, what we could have around here. Like if black again can go for bishop e6. And it's a very similar type of position. Like, okay, c5 here might be a bit early because white can go knight d5. And the problem with such a thing is that white is usually taking going bishop d5. Sort of instating this rather annoying pin. And okay, it's of course like you're never going to see something like game-changing in the Spanish that early, but these kinds of annoying little sequences do make a difference in the long run. And yeah, white did go for knight d5. Probably we'll see knight a5 if I had to put my money on this. We'll see knight a5 and bishop a2. Oh, actually, I just realized that we were looking at rook e1. Because this early knight d5 move, what this will allow is knight a5, and then taking and going c6. And I don't know. I feel like this is sort of a better d5 is also a move here, but I feel like this is a better type of outcome for black. Something like this. We do get our knight booted to b7, but even something like that might be very much playable. But this d5 move looks good. I feel like this is bound to happen. I guess there's an independent line here where white can take on f6. And but yeah, still it's not so clear what he's trying to do with the bishop. Again, if it goes here, we'll always have c6 and then bishop e6. Okay, I guess d5 here is not possible anymore. But bishop e6 is, and I guess white takes and goes b4. Feels like the best way to take advantage of this. But the only game that reached this position, also by a countryman of mine, was went like this, and now black goes c5, and okay, he's already pushing for an advantage here. So yeah, I'm not particularly fond of this knight d5 move, but we'll see what white has in store. Okay, and Felix just goes rook b8. Interesting. Interesting. So keeping his options wide open. I feel like that's really being his main strategy right now, just to keep the options open as much as possible. So he sidesteps this move rook b8. Yeah, might seem a bit odd, but he's just sidestepping future bishop d5s. And again, I think he's going for knight e5 next or something like this. I was even wondering here about this peculiar looking move with bishop d2, but okay, it's probably too passive to constitute like a threat to black's position. Okay, yeah, c3 is natural. Yeah, c3 will probably be played, I guess. Yeah, I don't see why not. c3, I guess, again, we can go knight a5. What would I rather do? If knight a5, I guess we trade, go bishop a2. Again, so equalish. I guess that we can also think about going bishop c2 here sometimes, now that the pawn is on c3. And like with the idea that if c6, then I don't really like black's position because we're taking, going b4, and going for some a4 or c4, or even d4. And the knight here just looks silly. And if we take, then our knight here is marooned. And again, b4 will be kind of strong. And then c4. So we'll see. Yeah, this c3 with bishop c2 looks interesting. So yeah, black, of course, is not forced to go knight a5 by any means. by any means. He might just go knight e7 or something like this, bishop d7 as well. He might go for something like this. And I guess he should go bishop e6 next, or like knight g6 and then bishop e6, something like this. It all feels pretty reasonable. Yeah, even this looks reasonable, but knight g6, I guess, is more conventional. Okay. Hello. I am doing good. How are you? I cannot really read your name properly. I'm sorry. Okay, guys. I will go for a short break here, and I will see you guys in a minute. Hello, guys. I'm back. Let's keep going with the commentary. Let's see what has transpired as I went to take my snack break. So, we got this move knight d5. So, when I left, the position was rather sort of dry and, well, there's plenty of play left, but the nature of the position is just sort of positional and slow and a bit dry. So, we got this move rook b8, and wow. Okay, so white has been thinking for the for the whole duration of me being gone. Ever since I left, white has been thinking. So it seems that I have returned in a appropriate moment. Okay, so white's going for this plan of knight h2 to g4. It is a very common idea to do this in these positions. So the thing is that the knight on f3, like, unless you're going to get d4 at some point, which is not going to happen very soon, then the knight on f3 is a bit misplaced as it doesn't have too much of a field to roam in, and the knights obviously need fields to roam in and gallop. So the knight gallops to h2, and it wants to come around to g4. So yeah, there's two ideas behind this. This is a maneuver that I also have seen like Robert James Fisher do quite often. So one of the points is that the queen wants to come to f3, and then the knight wants to come to g4, and white's trying to build up some sort of an initiative here on the king's side, some sort of an attack. And the thing with the knight on g4 is that pretty much taking it doesn't tend to be a good option, because the thing is that these rather like clumsy looking doubled pawns are actually quite useful in terms of clamping down on black's breakthroughs even more. And also white opens up the h file, which he can later use for his rook, and in hopes of creating some sort of an attack slash initiative. Now the thing is that every case is a different case, and in this one, it seems that black can take and just hop around to g6, which might happen. Which might happen because this is perfectly logical once you understand that white's idea is to go knight g4 and put pressure on this knight on f6, which doesn't really want to trade itself off on g4. Then it makes perfect sense to actually get rid of that knight and just transfer this one to g6, where it will be away from the scope of this knight on g4. So if white goes knight g4 right now, okay, that move doesn't do anything. And black also has some ideas of going queen h4, gaining some activity himself on the king's side. But I gotta be honest, the next move for black always feels like it's gotta be bishop e6. Ever since, ever since this position or something, like this one, every move, like the most natural move to me feels like bishop e6. So take, do this, and then, okay, white's not going to go knight g4 because the knight doesn't do anything there. It's probably, yeah, the thing is a bit like around that. Like white doesn't have such a constructive idea to do at the moment. There's nothing that useful to do. The knight ended up being rather misplaced here. It would actually much prefer to be on g3. And in the middle games, we usually have to think, like in terms of creating a plan, we usually have to think about where the pawn breaks are. And white's pawn breaks are d4, which is not likely to happen for some time because it would severely weaken the e4 pawn. Then we have f4, which is also highly unlikely to happen because it would mean that white has to give away this bishop on f4, which he doesn't really want to do. Like something like this is should be completely fine for black. And the bishop has some potential. Like maybe there's even better ways to do this. But in general, giving up this dark squared bishop doesn't feel like the way to go to my eyes. I guess that white can maybe put some pressure with like some queen f3 and sort of tickle this pawn a little bit. Could be. There could be some concrete nuances, but giving up this bishop in general is not really such a great idea. So we ruled out this break, we ruled out this one. So the only move, the only pawn break that makes sense is this a4, this old friend, which we have already talked about quite a bit. And against this, okay, black has to decide whether he wants to go b4, giving away the c4 square. Probably not so important, given as though this knight on h2 is super far away from reaching said square. And trading, as we've seen, is always terrible because now this pawn is just weak and it's an immediate target. And lastly, allowing white to trade in, giving him this open file, giving him some more extra play doesn't really make that much sense. So b4 by far is the most sensible move here, I would say. And next up, as always, bishop e6. And we're heading in this direction. Bishop b3 has been played, so we did get this sequence. And okay, the knight g6 still hasn't been played, but it probably will be. Because the knight doesn't make any sense here on e7 if it is not intending to travel towards the g6th square. So yeah, after knight g6, what do I think white is going to do? That is a good question. He might try to stir up things here with this f4 move. This is a possibility. Again, I don't love it, but apparently there are some concrete issues about the f7 pawn in this line. Like it's not so easy to defend it. I mean, there's probably ways. I see the computer is pointing out this move bishop e7, wanting to trap the rook with this, but probably black should just be more precise here, like bishop e6. Trade off these bishops this way, and then just break with d5 immediately. And again, I have some hopes for the bishop in general. In the endgames, I mean, it depends a lot on the structure, but a very general rule of thumb is that when there are pawns on both flanks, the bishop tends to outclass the knight in most cases because, let's say, like the bishop's tentacles basically reach both sides of the board at the same time, and the bishop can attack and defend from the same place, where the small pony has to hop around everywhere to try and get from A to B. Anywho, I do think knight g6 is going to happen, and then we'll see what white comes up with. If he doesn't want to go for this f4, which is quite understandable, then let's say after a4, b4, he's pretty much running out of constructive ideas. That's not to say that his position is bad. It's just that momentum is a real thing in chess, right? This is something that I want to mention. Momentum is a real thing in chess, and so when you're playing white, like you get out of the opening, and in most cases you feel like you have some sort of an idea, some plan, some hope for an advantage, some ideas to attack, and so on and so forth. And if you come to a moment like this in your game where you just hit this brick wall, where you feel like there's nothing to do, there's no ideas left in the position, it kind of messes with you, like internally, like psychologically. And I feel like the tide begins to shift very often in these cases. So momentum is very important in chess. And white here has lost his momentum. I mean, again, this f4 could be the only way to try and keep it alive. It is a bit weird, but we can also see that the momentum is shifting a little bit by white having thought 25 minutes. And guys, like, as I've said, this is something that grandmasters are much better at doing than IMs or FMs and so on, is their time management. So here the player with the white pieces spent 25 minutes and played this poor looking move, knight h2, where black's reply was by no means forced, but just very logical and good. And so these 25 minutes of thought weren't really justified at all, right? So we should try and keep our pace on the chessboard. In some critical moments, we will need to think, but this one ain't it. This is not a critical moment, right? Okay, let's take a gander at the other boards. How do we sin this game? I don't know. This is an Italian game, very similar to our game, actually, in terms of the structure. Okay, so some bishops were traded, and okay, looking at games with the engine in general is just wild. It's just wild. Like, how can you explain to me that the best move here is g4? This is like outrageous. We don't even have a bishop like on c1 or something to attack. So it's just like, what are we doing? How are we going to mate black? I don't know. No one plays like this. At least no one with my brain. So we get this. Okay. It feels like white has some initiative, some pull. Knight to the f3rd square. Yeah. Makes sense. I guess black is going f6. But there might be issues. I would have to think. Oh, this is the current position. Interesting. So after f6, like, I really want to break this up with d4, but I have to see whether it is viable or not. Might not be. It might just not be good. For example, I'm thinking that black can go bishop f7 and then take on d4. And I'm not sure, like, if this is so hot for white. Maybe we can consider taking with the knight, hopping the pony around to f5, but I don't like this pawn on e3. Again, my thought process in chess is very, like, structurally oriented. It's funny, like, I don't really know how to describe my style. It often happens in the same tournament that I'll have games that are super positional and sort of just boring. And then I'll also have like super dynamic games with lots of attacks and stuff. And at the end of the day, I don't really know what kind of positions I'm more drawn towards. But one thing I do know is that I'm a big fan and believer in having like solid structures and fluid structures, and I hate these like isolated pawns. So I would probably take black here. So that's one thing. So d4, I guess, is not such a big threat. So f6 is probably the best move. And then what is white intending? It's probably intending some knight h4 somehow to come around to these squares, even though the knight just came from there. Yeah, I'm not so sure why knight f5 wasn't played. I guess there could be some stuff with knight f6. Oh man, that would involve too much brain usage on my end. But yeah, I guess he was sort of not on board with some knight f6 stuff. Computer says this is rubbish. Oh, because there's this and this. Sure. Or no, sorry, I'm hanging the queen. Yeah, queen h6. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I'm not sure what he didn't like here. It felt like the natural continuation for white, but even after this, he might just go back to h4. And we'll get something like this. Yeah, but black is very solid on the king side. It is sort of an open game, open-ish, which gives the stronger player like more chances to outplay him in general. But still, I don't dislike black's position at all. Let's look at the next game, board 3. Okay, you got h6, take. Okay, white is just much better here. Again, just purely because of the structure. Also, black's pieces are very clumsy, of course, but his king is wide open and the structure is terrible. It's just a clear advantage for white, although the game is far from over. In this one, the Pits succeeded once more. So again, he went for this maneuver similar to his game with Felix, but yeah, it's a little bit of a better version, or a much better version, probably, because in that game, basically, this pawn was back here, if I'm not mistaken, and Felix just had the whole center like this. Whereas here, black has committed to this sort of positionally undesirable um, pawn overextension, so to speak, but the bishop pair will shine in this much more open type of position. So we got something like this, and somehow the bishop pair was traded, but at the cost, at the very high price of a measly pawn. But pawns are important. Pawns are truly important. Oh yeah, this move is nice. Just stopping the rook from arriving on d7. Let's look at some other games. What is happening here? Okay, yeah, we just this was just a very boring opening. What is this called? The cold system, or the Tartakower? No, not the Tartakower, the Zuckertort. Those are sort of similar names to my mind. What about Alexander Krastev? Okay, this game somehow is not that boring, even though it came from an exchange French. It's not. It's kind of entertaining because black has castled long. This is also kind of a way to go, a possible way to go for black when you're trying to avoid like the main theory of the exchange French, like going for these systems with long castles is pretty interesting, and then just launching an attack, which is exactly what he's doing. Now the computer is telling him to go for this h5, which I think he will do. I think he will do this because otherwise white is planting a knight on h5, and is it's just sort of this knight on h5 is just sort of completely stalling black's kingside assault. So I think he will go for this h5, and yeah, I guess there's some stuff here. Probably just queen h6 is good enough. And yeah, so the pawn is not really up for grabs, and if it's not, then that's sort of a cold shower for white, because I guess the whole point of knight g3 is just to take on h5 if a pawn shall appear there. So white will be forced to do something else. Hello, everyone. Yes, the board is delayed 15 minutes per the tournament organizer's request. Felix is like Thanos collecting the remaining 2 Infinity Stones, Time Stone, and Mind Stone. Dude, what the hell are you talking about? In terms of like his advantages in this game, because he already has like an objective advantage in terms of the position. So you're saying that he's also gaining a time advantage, like a time lead? Is that it, my friend? Oh, we have some more moves. I hadn't really gotten that. Okay, so white went for queen h5. Okay. So finally we get this bishop e6. I was like twitching already to see these bishops get traded. So he takes like this, not the pass remove, which would be pawn takes, blundering the knight. So he takes like this, and white just goes g3. So again, like white is just sort of keeping the balance. I mean, he's hinting at this possibility of going f4. But, again, I should mention this. This might be a reason why white could go wrong in this game is that, um, like, I don't want to say weaker players, but like, especially when you're facing stronger opposition, stronger than yourself, you oftentimes feel the need to like push the tempo of the game to not let the other guy sort of breathe and do his stuff. So you want to always be doing something, like always being like conjuring up some plan. And going f4 here for white is very committal in general. So it doesn't have to be bad. It could be a good version of trying to gain the initiative, but it is rather committal. So it could be like sometimes you'd think you're trying to do something active, but you're really just weakening your position uh more than your more than gaining an initiative. So I really like this decision by Felix, just very principled to go d5. So the opponent is trying to lash out in a wing, like a flank attack. So you open up the center, and it's time this guy got some air in his lungs as well. Although our next move is not that clear, but again, he's it's what I'm saying. He's been keeping up the pace so well. Like look at his last moves. Okay, we got 9 minutes on this one, which was his probably his longest think. Then 1 minute for rook b8. 4 minutes to take on d5. Like less than a minute to do this maneuver. And then this was instant, and now he spent 5 minutes on this one. So I'm telling you, these guys are really good at keeping their pace. Anyways, it's not so clear what Black's next move is going to be because I'm not so interested in trading on e4. And yeah, we do have ideas of going d4, but again, it's not really what I wanted to do because the problem is that once you close the center, then you're opening up the door. You're sort of inviting these attacks much more. So let's just say white makes some move. After this, like if you just sort of wait around, all of a sudden this attack is coming in with a lot of strength. So I do think that the pawn should stay on d5, and we should just do something else with our life. I'm not sure what that something else will look like, but maybe we can start tickling the pawns a bit with some rook c6. Could be an idea. And after c3, maybe gain some ground for the queen. Could be an idea. I'm not gonna rule it out. Maybe rook c6 and then try to break up on the queen side. Yeah, I kind of like this. I feel like the pawn should just sit around on d5 and ask white what he's going to do. And again, I'm not sure. I haven't been sure about what white wants to do for a number of moves now. This knight is just still terrible. I want to improve this knight. How can we do that? Can we even do it? I'm thinking like if I could just pick my knight up and put it wherever I wanted to in the board. In which square would I want to put it? And I'm not being able to come up with a reasonable answer. I don't see a single square on the knight on the board that would be good for the knight. I guess this one. Yeah, this one would be great. The chances of the knight getting here in the next 10 moves are like, I'm gonna go 2%. So one out of every 50 games, then I will end there. Okay, I'm just rambling about random stuff. Yeah. Well, but I do think black's next move will be some form of rook c6 and some plan on the queen side. I don't think he's touching this pawn anytime soon. He might go c5 as well if he's in the mood to be more like aggressive and push the tempo a bit. Um, let's see. Yeah, yeah. Felix is doing great at the moment. Um, and white goes h4. So again, you see this pattern. It's hard psychologically to just assume to just accept that sort of your time has passed at a specific game, and you should start to look for ways to equalize and sort of steady the ship. So instead, what white is trying to do is again be active, sort of make some active looking moves, but for the time being, he won't be punished for this because black doesn't have any sort of an interesting attack going on. But I just don't really like this approach by white in general. For example, this move that was being suggested by the computer is quite sad um in the sense that you were clearly trying to gain some initiative or something by going queen h5 and creating some sort of a weird attack. And then you're just accepting that, well, it doesn't really work, and I just want to clarify the position in the center. Like, pretty please, can you just trade my pawns and shake my hand, get the draw? But of course, black wouldn't be forced to trade here. Like, rook f6 for starters is one thing. But yeah, these kinds of ideas like h4, it feels to me like the trend of the game is that white is still trying to sort of create something, get something going, and he should be looking to simplify the position. Anyways, what is black going to do? Okay, so can we do this rook c6? Well, for starters, it's a legal move, so that's pretty good. But white is just going to go queen e2, I guess. And I guess the queen isn't really doing anything there. So we could consider c5 for sure, with the idea of going c4 probably. That feels reasonable. However, this pawn on c5 could be weak in some cases. In some endgames, maybe this is a bit like too much of an abstract thinking, but something like this, yeah, if we trade, at some point the pawn can be sort of weak. If it's not really pushing itself to c4, then it's just going to be sort of a target sooner or later. But of course, there's ways for black to play this. We can just remove the queen somewhere and move on with our life. So I don't know. I don't really feel like c5 is sort of so mandatory. But you do have to come up with a plan here for black, which is probably not so easy. Probably not so easy. The position is still very like simple and symmetrical in nature, so it's hard to mix things up. Okay, Felix ends up going for the trade on e4. And what is he intending next? I guess queen c8 to c6, something like this, or maybe rook c6, queen e6. Could be. I mean, there's plenty of ways to play the position. I believe she is. Yeah, I believe she is that photographer. At least from her Instagram page, I think I saw some pictures like that. Yeah, it's good that we have some photographic talent around the chess world. I don't think I can name that many photographers. There's David Lada, which I guess is the most famous chess photographer. I'm pretty sure there was like every time I go to chess base and I look at the players' cards, like a number of pictures show up from like way back in the day, like around the year 2000. And basically, a lot of pictures get taken by professional photographers in really big chess events like the Olympiads and so on. And so every time there's an Olympiad, there's new pictures that come into circulation. But there's a lot of old ones from around the like the 90s and the year 2000 that were taken by Kathy Rogers, I believe, who might be Ian Rogers' wife. This could be completely false as well. I'm not sure, but they could be related. A lot of people in the chess world are related. Ian Rogers, by the way, was like a legendary player. That crossed 2600 like in the 90s, which was quite hard to do back then. Still quite hard, but it was harder back then. I feel like Emilia has to hop on in this stream at some point and someday and give us the whole rant about her PhD and like what exactly she is studying or investigating. I feel like that would be pretty cool. Okay, meanwhile, what is Felix reaching for? Let me put my detective glasses on. Yeah, I see the queen on c6. So queen e8 must have been played. And then white, what did white do? White went for queen g4. Okay, makes sense. So I think this is how the game continued. Queen e8, white went for knight for queen g4, intending to push h5, queen here. Oh wow. The computer is suggesting bishop h6, which may or may not have been in the player's radar. So like it's so natural to just go h5, but then once you move the knight away, the rook is just defending the pawn. But to do it in this order, it could be an idea actually. Like I guess you take on. Oh, do you want to take on c2? Probably. Probably. And then let's say we take on g6 somehow. And the whole vibe is that black's kingside is just getting shattered. And then if the knight does manage to make its way to the f5 square, then white has some, at least some stuff going on, right? At least there's some targets and some stuff in the position. There might be cleaner ways to do this because here the b2 pawn is going to fall. I mean, I guess even that is not that clear cut, like to calculate. I don't know. I guess on queen d7 we still have d6, but then there's a check again. I'm not sure, but the computer was even playing out like just going b4 and then taking on g6. That's kind of high level, but feasible, like findable. And then we'll take it, and I start to not hate white's position, honestly. So this might have been missed. Also, I'm speaking in the future because I'm sort of assuming white went queen g4 because that's what I see in in the video transmission. Yeah, yeah, it would be quite interesting to to listen to. Okay, let's see. Trying to look at the games where the biggest where there's a large discrepancy in terms of the evaluation bar, like either white having a massive advantage or black having a massive advantage. Yeah, this is that game that came from the Pierce, so this did happen Queen C7, and black is just much better, just a clean pawn up, and this one we left it off around here. Okay, white went for G1, very natural. G4 takes, and I guess he'll just trade this, give a check, and he's trying to figure out how to go from here. But yeah, I guess the position is just very simple. Queen h7 and take on d5. Like knight takes, you go like queen c5. Looks very good. Anyways, guys, I should remind you that if Felix does win his game today, he will be proclaimed champion of the Sligo Chess Open. He will be ordained even the champion. So it's kind of an important game for him. Also, if he wins today, I think like theoretically he can lose tomorrow and still not lose any rating points. So there's kind of a lot of things at stake. Which is probably what I'll have for dinner. A good old steak. By the way, I'm curious to see how the SCC is doing. So Magnus defeated Denis Lazovic, I think. And now we would get Firuzcha against Naka. Oh, and it has just started. That has just kicked off. Okay. Great. Gosh, I feel like the transmission is slower today, like the delay is bigger today than usually. I swear to God, like he has played Queen C6 so long ago. And H5 has happened. Okay, so we didn't get this line. We didn't get this Bishop H6, which is scaring me to some extent. This didn't look so bad for white. This tough, and then black takes here. I mean, you're not forced to take, but I think you are taking. And then white would have to find this B4 stuff, but it's all within the realms of a possibility. What is a bit harder to understand is that like white is just a clean pawn down here. So you're really playing against this weak king and this knight, which all of a sudden has the potential to be better than the bishop if it lands on such a square, but it's still kind of far away from there. Anyways, not that easy to spot. So I think we did get this, and 97. And now we're back on track. Now we are back on the track. Also, why haven't I put on some music for myself yet? Yeah, I mean, the position is still very dry. That is just the truth. The position is still very dry. Still very equal-ish. I would still pick black any day of the week because I don't like how white's pieces look. I mean, especially this knight is just poorly placed here on h2. It will take a while to get back to the village. And meanwhile, black will try to make something happen here on the queen side, but it's not so easy anyways. It's it's always sort of easy to play logical moves, but it's quite hard to win chess games. It's like you have to win them over and over and over again. Let's see. Yeah, so I can see that Felix is thinking. Yeah, Felix is thinking in the live feed. Maybe I can just make the moves honestly. So queen c6, h5, knight e7, and what did white play? We're getting a lot of moves in the video feed. Rook e1? What? Did what? I'm getting so confused. No, so there's still rook on e6 for sure. He played rook a e1? I feel like he did, because I see rook on b8, I see rook on e6. I think he went rook a e1. And now knight c8. And what did he play now? Oh, there's a pawn on c3 as well. So he probably played c3 now. Felix improved his knight. Quite instructive. Knight c8. And now rook a1 was played. Okay, this makes more sense. This makes more sense. And now knight d6 happened. Uh, yeah, I have some questions, man. What was this rook a1 move? But white's position is delicate anyways. Yeah, but why didn't we go knight f3 though? And then like knight d2. This would have made more sense, I feel. Now the knight at least serves a defensive role as opposed to no role. Rook e1, knight d6, and white is slowly getting a worse and worse position. So now, like, the e4 pawn is hanging, and knight c4 is always like a thorn in white's shoe. He will go bishop c1, surely. And now the most natural move is this a5, followed by b4. And finally, black might um, start to make some progress here on the queen side. Um, Let me see if there's any more moves. Yeah, white has just played bishop c1. Also, a great thing for Felix here is that he's up on the clock. Um, if this were me, this is the textbook type of position where I know that I have a slight advantage and like the position is just not going to change that much for a while. And I would ideally start to press him on the clock, as in making moves a bit faster than usual to gain a bigger time advantage. It is very hard to see what white can do um, in regards to improving his position. But he must. But one thing is clear: he must start with, excuse me, with knight f3, and then um, and then hope to get some knight h4 to f5 somehow. But yeah, let's say black goes b4. We take this a bunch of times, I guess. And now this pawn is weak. This one is also hit. Maybe you can't do this actually. But then what can you do? Yeah, white's position is pretty delicate. I guess you go for some rook e3, which is a bit weird, like walking into knight c4. Right? Yeah, he's walking a tightrope. White is. Let's see. And Felix has played a5. So all of this has been played. Which again is it's just very natural. All the most natural moves, and it's the onus is always on white to make sure that he's keeping the position afloat and that he's not blundering anything, because in these delicate positions where you have to be precise and so on, it's very easy to make a natural looking move and you're there goes a pawn or a piece in a worse case. So b4 is just coming through. I think white is just going to go knight f3 because there's nothing else to do. And then b4 is going to happen. This will get taken once, exactly once. And I think white will go. It's very hard to tell, man. Computer's top choice is bishop d2. That is not really happening, I don't think. Just walking into knight c4. But the same can be applied for rook e3, but I guess there you have like rook d3. So I think rook e3 is sort of bound to be played. But yeah, man, what to say? Even this kind of scenario just looks really good for black. Okay, I guess here I'm allowing some stuff on the last rank, but okay, just ditch that and let's just go like rook b3 immediately. Yeah, yeah, we might be heading towards a big advantage. So Felix has had a tiny advantage since I was born almost, and we might be heading for something a bit bigger now. Okay, guys, I will take a short break and I'll be right back to watch the conclusion of this game. See you. Hello, people. I am back with some more commentary in Felix's game. I can see some new people in the chat. And I think someone upgraded to the VIP. I'm pretty sure that's what that means. So I hope you enjoy it. So what has been happening? A5 did happen, knight to the f3rd square. And now b4, yeah, I thought b4 would happen. Felix went bishop e7. Okay. So he could be looking to chop off the knight if it lands on h4. That could and should be the idea. Otherwise, I don't really understand bishop e7. So I think after knight h4, that will get taken, and then he'll follow up with b4. And yeah, once more, he's putting the screws on a bit here. Keeping his opponent attentive at all times. And is about to dip below the 15-minute mark. Actually, let me see if I can let me see if I can see whether the moves are whether we have some more moves in the live video transmission. So there's definitely queen on c4, which Felix is reaching for. And there's definitely a knight on d2. Yes. So how did that happen? And there's probably rook on e2. Okay. Start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So this, and he played this, and now knight d2 came. And I guess he's going queen d3. Rook e3, queen c2, just sneaking in there. Looks interesting. Looks interesting. Felix still taking his time here. And the queen did go to d3. So this is the position they have. And queen c2 is coming next. And again, before is just the way to break through here. So, okay, what is white doing? Okay, white's position is just taking up like more and more the passive look. So he'll probably go rook e3 and then maybe some queen e2. I think this is sort of natural. And yeah, black still doesn't have that much of a clear way to make progress. I believe white has moved, and he has played not rook e3. Was it rook d1? No, rook d1 is a weird move. I think rook e1 was played. Yeah, the rook's no longer on f1. I feel like rook d1 was played. This is a bit weird, just walking into this pin. I really hope I have the right position, but I think I do. Because queen c4 was played. And then all this stuff. And now rook d1. So what's the idea here? What is the idea here? I mean, if the rook moves next, the queen is just coming to c2 anyways. I don't really know what the rook does here. Anyways, it doesn't really break the position that much for white. Everything's still pretty much the same. And black should still go for b4. So I feel like at some point, Felix will just pull the trigger here and go for b4 and start creating some play. Okay, let's look at the other boards. It's been a while since I've looked at the other boards. So this game, we last saw this around here. While black went for e4. That move wasn't even on my radar. And he went for this stuff. And apparently white had to be more precise here to keep an edge. But it still feels like white has a very comfortable looking position. Yeah, maybe he didn't have to trade. But then again, c5 is coming. I guess that, yeah, probably against c5, we can take this one and now go for c4 and d5. Interesting. Okay, black is still in time to make some counterplay here with b5. Yeah, quite a difficult sort of evaluation, like problem type position. Instead we get this, and the game is very equal. Black should again look for some counterplay here with b6, and he's not likely to lose at all. Okay, the next board. Apparently black has just blundered. And yeah, after rook g7, the game pretty much seems to be over. The next one, okay, it's pretty similar to when we last left off. And the other IM in the tournament, how is he doing? Okay, so the attack just originated a sequence of exchanges, it seems. So what happened here? So this queen f3, and now black declined to go for this endgame, which looks nice. Maybe he didn't see a clear way here to continue, like to pose problems. So instead he declined this. And now this happened, knight g6. It got taken again. The pawns were broken up. And here, what? Oh wow, knight d2. Oh well, if white would have found this game would have been the player with the black pieces would have been in for a ride here if knight d2 would have been found. Because if rook h2, if rook t2 just king f1, and now we're picking up the bishop or the rook, like the rook's just falling. And if bishop g6, there's f7, and again the rook is distracted, and black can resign. So white would have just held the extra pawn. Okay, so instead g3, which is weaker, but the game is just equal. Black doesn't have any sliver of hope here to take over. So this should just be heading towards a draw, which should be an excellent result for Zach. He already drew Felix in this tournament, right? And now he would be drawing the number 2 seed. So I guess he's getting some rating. Yeah, he's gaining a lot of rating. Let me actually quickly take a look at this game. I'm just curious to see what happened here while we wait for Felix's game to develop. Oh wow, so he went for this crazy system, like this crazy Dutch system. I mean, I guess that white also went f4. Okay. So black has a very passive position, but okay. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. E5. What a move. What a move, E5. If this one, bishop C5, black's position is just like a spring that's about to unravel. Interesting. Queen E6. And yeah, once the bishop pair got active. Okay, why wasn't this pawn taken? I guess that they just thought this was winning for black, which is reasonable, but it seems that there are concrete ideas. So instead, this happened. And okay, it was just a messy game, but kudos to him. He's been on a roll lately. He's approaching 2200 faster than ever. Okay, let me see if I can catch up a bit more with the live feed. In that line, can't white force an exchange of queens? In what line? So this was the game, right? But let me see if I can see something in the video feed. So Felix is thinking. I feel like there's a rook on d1 and a rook on e1. And black has his bishop on g5. Okay, so bishop g5 happened. And rook e d1. So Felix is really interested, it seems, in getting this bishop versus knight in balance. I feel like queen c2 should still just be played. And yeah, I mean, I still like his position, but he needs to break through somehow. How he will do that remains to be seen. Because white is still solid as a rock. Like this agglomeration of pieces is still quite steady. Yeah. Okay, so what happens if we go for b4 now? Seems to be a possibility. Yeah, what is white doing there? Let me put that on the board. Take, take. Knight f3. And okay, this is just nothing, right? Take, take, take. Okay, there's a rook b3 in the end, but this is just nothing, I guess. This one is just falling as well. Okay. So this, right? Yeah. Yeah, queen c2 should still just be played. Yeah, me neither. I also didn't see bishop g5. Again, I don't fully understand what the point is. Okay, the queen has been placed on c2, and then white has played queen e2. So this is the live position, it seems. And yeah, it's just hard for black to do something. He might try to take at some point and just try to play this position on, but yeah, white is solid, but his position still feels inferior with the knight hopping around to c4 and so on. But still, like, there's not that many weaknesses, right? It's just hard to win this. So I don't know what Felix is going to come up with here. He has played something though. What has he played? A4. Okay, that was not on my radar. I mean, it's a logical move, but okay. Okay. Interesting. So there are some ideas to play a position as such where the knight, yeah, this pawn structure, this queen side being just fixed like this is quite annoying. Still, this will still be a long grind, but you know, often it's easy to slip up in these positions as white as the defending side and just make mistakes because you want to avoid getting into such a situation, which often is the only way for you to even play. But you understand that your rook is going to be stuck defending this pawn forever, which is not ideal. The knight is very active, and you know your pieces are just generally bad. You have some paranoia that black can maybe take over the file and do whatnot. The reality is that white's position is some sort of a fortress, but you're not sure about that during the game, obviously. So often you end up rejecting this direction, going for something else, and then just getting into trouble. Anyways, like white is almost in the so-called Zugzwang, as in he doesn't have a lot of moves to play. So he's either going to go knight f1 or knight f3. Probably knight f1 makes more sense, if I'm being honest. And takes like the same thing will happen, but now knight c4 is met with knight e3, I assume. Um, like white will get the file there, but I don't really feel like he should care about it at all. Like this scenario feels um, very feels too simplified. C4 is even a better move, yeah. Um, so after this, yeah, I feel like this will happen. I mean, we could retreat with the bishop, but it doesn't really make sense. Um, so after this, I guess knight c4 is not going to be played, but I start to get the feeling that the game is shifting more and more towards a draw than a win. I do get that feeling. On the live feed, they exchanged queens. That's true. That is true. So we are in this position. And Felix is considering trading bishops or not. And he has. Yeah, so we got to this position. We got to this one where I don't know, he's going to have to pull some sort of a rabbit out of a hat here to in order to win this game, because this is not easy anymore. It was never easy, but now it has become too simplified. Okay, I don't think he's gonna go. I mean, it's hard to tell honestly if he's going for knight c4 or not. Trying to find some ideas here for black. Maybe c5, b4. If we can envision trading everything and black ends up with the rook on b4, that's sort of powerful. Also not enough to win probably, but we would have to call one Magnus Carlsen to teach us how to win this game, guys. To teach us how to press here. Felix is tired of winning. Could be. I feel like he was pressing for a win for most of this game. But now he probably understands that He doesn't have much to do. I still don't think he's going to shake hands. I think he's going to try and make something happen here, but it starts to become too dryish after knight c4. Yeah, I feel like knight e3 is just the simplest. Or maybe no, maybe rook d1. I'm not sure which one I like more. Because after rook d1, rook d6, how are we doing this? If we trade, we can't really go knight e3. I mean, no, never mind. Yeah, we can still just go knight e3 here. So yeah, probably we get the file first. And then, I mean, yeah, black's also just running out of ideas. So he's just going to go rook d6, contest um, the file, and then just knight e3. And this is also going to get traded. Like, black doesn't have to trade, but let's just say king f8 or something. We probably should just take on c4. And this king has no way inside the position, like through the pawns. So I would just say like this kind of thing. Well, maybe I'm giving black some chances here with rook b5, which I missed. So f4 is not really needed. I mean, there's plenty of ways to play this, but let's just run our king to c1, I guess, and then use our rook to do something. Or maybe keep the king around these pawns. That's probably a better idea. That's my final idea here. Just keep the king here, put the rook here, and hold on tight. That should be enough. Okay, but I'm seeing hands in head by Felix, which which could indicate that he's really trying to um, activate his neurons and push for a win. Let's see, do we have more moves? He's still thinking after rook d1, but knight f1 was played, right? Yeah. Yes. So this is the live position from the video. And yeah, I honestly expect a shake of the hands pretty soon. As in a draw being agreed. Um, I don't see anything other than rook d6 currently. It's gonna get chopped off, and then I guess you could take with the knight. I mean, won't really do you much good. Just f3. Maybe after I'm getting into some degree of trouble. I mean, yeah, I'm just not sure if I want to give white the file. It's probably nothing, but I guess in order to be cleaner than that, we would go. Yeah, we would have to go 93, but that comes at the cost of temporarily sacrificing this pawn. Oh, but knight f5 is pretty clean, right? Yeah, knight f5 is pretty clean because we stop. Oh, knight d5 works too. Never mind. Everything works here. Because knight f5 physically stops f5 from happening, but knight d5 also just stops it because of knight e7. So we're just getting the pawn back next, and white isn't even symbolically worse anymore. He's not worse by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, if that happens, that is. For the time being, he just needs one more move, 93, in order to be all set. Maybe you can try king f8, king d7, rook c8, and then king e8. But I didn't really understand what is the idea in the end. Like, what are we trying to achieve? Am I still behind? Yeah, I'm still behind in the video feed. 96 is a fascinating move, just blocking the open file and gluing everything together. Perhaps the king to g5 seems like an attempt to me. Yeah, I would agree with this king to g5. But yeah, the king is very far away from there. And white has his ideas now of going like knight d5. I mean, he's not threatening anything particularly that dangerous, but I don't know. Eventually, he might go for some f4. Okay, so let's say black goes like, how do we even try to activate the king? Like f6, I guess. But f6 like also just voluntarily fixes our own structure. I mean, you know, I don't really like anything. I don't really like doing anything in this position. But let's say f6. So like knight, rook, not here. That would be the pattern move. Rook here. And okay, let's say f3. King, king. Okay, but now it's even like physically impossible to get here. So I guess we just hang around with our king on e6. I guess white does the same, or you can also just move the knight back. Something like this feels like a dead draw, honestly. So we will see. Rook d1. Wait, do I see a rook on d7? I do. So rook e8 happened. Okay. So Felix is still trying to make something happen to see what happens. Throw some mud on the wall, see what sticks. And white played rook d7. So why did we reject 93? I guess because black is going rook d8. Yeah, I guess black is just going rook d8. And still, something like this should be a draw, but it is understandable that white didn't want to go for this because the general rule in rook end games is that you want to have activity with your rook and your king, and you want to avoid being the passive side. So just a scenario like this where black puts his rook on b1 and keeps putting pressure on the b2 pawn is just a typical scenario where black is active and white is passive. Yeah, in this position it's not the biggest problem in the world because there's no further ways to attack the b2 pawn. But at any rate, again, you want to be the side that is active, like attacking pawns in the endgames, not the side that's defending. So it's understandable that he didn't want to give him the file like that. So what he did is rook d7, rook d7, and yeah, I guess c6 is going to be played. Not sure about that. c6, knight e3, and then if we go for the same idea, white's probably just playing rook c7, and he's the one who's starting to get active. Could be. So, again, it feels like more trades are bound to happen. So what has happened? Rook d7. Oh, we got this scenario. Okay, this scenario happened. Okay. Okay, so we got this. So rook d8. Wait, how did this happen exactly? In which order? So the knight sits on c4. The rook is on d8. No, the knight was traded on c4. And the rook is on d8. So how did that... So probably like this, yeah? Knight e3, and now rook d8. And now takes. So this is the life position. Okay, so white did end up going for this, that I said could be slightly dangerous, allowing the infiltration of the black rook. But what he's saying immediately is that, okay, I understand what white wants. After rook d1, he just wants rook e1, for example, this, and this kind of thing. And if you ever trade, okay, like it's just going to be a draw. The position is too close. It's just worth noting probably that in these king and pawn endgames, usually one side, like it's enough for one side to just be a single pawn up in order to change the evaluation from a complete draw to an absolute win. So that's sort of a known thing, sort of a famous thing, that in king and pawn endgames, being up just one pawn usually means you can win, and quite easily at that, usually. So yeah, white is just harassing the rook forever. You could put the rook there, but just king e2 and then rook d1, I think. Is this wrong? Okay, black's just going back as well. Could trading be dangerous? Well, there's some truth to this being dangerous. Interesting, yeah. Because the thing is that, to the same logic of the extra pawn making the difference, the thing is that black here is basically playing with an extra pawn on the king side, because these two will always mark these three pawns basically. And so we'll just get our king here, break with, I can probably show this, break with d5, and then again we have this 4-on-3. What this means is that we will sooner or later, for example, imagine we trade all of these pawns, right? And we just get this loner pass pawn on the h file that distracts white's king that has to run towards it to take it. And then we use that time to just scoop up all of these pawns. So that's sort of the standard technique of how to win these king and pawn endgames. So, but it's interesting that here, like, the pawn count is even, but in practice, because these two hold these three, black is playing as if he were a pawn up. So it's probably important to keep this crippled structure of black's play something else, and we probably have a fortress. I don't think it's absolutely dead like the position, but yeah, um, it should still be completely tenable. Okay, so Felix went for g6, which is quite interesting in this position, I think. So what he wants in the future is to create a passed pawn here on the h file. At some point to do h5, g5, h4, create a passed pawn. And I gotta be honest, he's creating some chances, man. White can never get the file because of this idea of going rook d6, as we discussed. So I do feel like he's gonna get some chances. I feel like practically his opponent, by the time usage, his opponent seems to be drastically underestimating how difficult it could be to hold this position. I kind of like his chances, actually. I have I've had the feeling that this was more drawish a couple moves ago. So what do we have? Yeah, h5 was played. And now I would say the white player is realizing that after rook d2, we can just go rook d6. And this is a problem. Because white is stuck now. And black is just going king f7, g5, h4 at some point. And he'll have his chances. Maybe black's rook belongs on the 6th rank. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Black's just going to keep the rook here and come in with the king. I gotta tell you, I wouldn't be confident here holding this with white. I really wouldn't. Um, because like in these endgames, when you're in the defending side, you really want to find a way to simplify things, to force simplifications and force the draw. But this position isn't like a forced draw. Like white will probably still have to find some moves. Okay, meanwhile, on the second board, I see that we have a winning advantage. So it seems that black also failed to play this endgame precisely. Yeah, he shouldn't have allowed this, right? Yeah, g5 here was very important. Take. If check, go king e6. I mean, you're allowing the rook to come in, but the king at least is completely cut off. So this should be just completely fine. I did forget 5 f6. Yeah, this is an instructive mistake. He allowed him to go to g5. And after this trade, yeah, this was still his last chance to go f6. But after this, rook f1, this is threatened. The king goes away. And now the king threatens to infiltrate. And now he goes for rook a1, and I guess he wants this maneuver somehow. And after after f6, now he comes back and infiltrates on this side. Yeah, very instructive. So black could have kept white from entering like this. It's a very natural move as well, but again, sometimes you have many natural moves. Not all of them work. Let me take a look at Zach. Okay, Zach is drawn already. This game has finished in a draw. White could press this, right? Am I crazy? Like if I just take this one, and then I'll try and probably succeed in taking this one. Okay, Zach could have definitely played this one on. And we'll get this most likely drawn 4 against 3, bishop and rook versus knight and bit versus rook and knight, but you gotta press these kinds of positions, man. You gotta play these ones. You have 18 minutes against 1 minute. Dude, you gotta play these positions out, man. Okay. No, there's no extra time. There's no extra time. It's just a 30-second increment, and that's it. Yeah, White has been thinking right after h5. Again, I think that after h5, so how was this? Rook, knight, rook, 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 knight, this. I feel like after h5, White realized that he's in for like a um some suffering because after rook d2, I'm playing rook d6. And I think White was already just sort of autopiloting towards a draw, and he's not going to get it, not that easily. So White is still thinking, but he doesn't have that much time left. And I feel like White should save his time here for a critical moment, because right now it's clearly not such a critical moment. He should just make some move like f3 and save his time for later. So Black is going to do this. I think White is just going to have to wait. I'm not sure where we want to put the king, like I guess in f2. Oh, but this allows the rook in as well. I guess we don't want to do that. Let's just wait with the rook, I guess. This. Keep waiting. But I don't know how to wait. This feels dangerous. This feels very dangerous. Okay, but let's say I make some move. And if king g5, I go rook h2, and I have this type of fortress. Now there's nothing to do. So black needs to do something else. Some g5. I go back. Okay, I probably keep my rook on h2, yeah? Just to stop this g5 idea. So let's go king e2. Black's probably gotta need to go king rook h8 at some point. But when he does that, I feel like white will threaten to infiltrate this. And if I can rook d2, I'm not sure I can. h4 is coming in. But okay, if I just wait. h4. I mean, yeah, there's still... But I probably could have put my king here so that when you go g5 and I just wait, if you go h4, I can take and go f4 probably. But this is losing. Yeah, this is just losing, right? Yeah, just h3. And again, it's one of those cases where if you trade everything, this is just easily lost. So that's not really a thing. Yeah, so it's not that easy. Probably it's much smarter to just go g4. Yeah, that's more like the problem, right? We just go g4 and close everything off. And now you still get this very dangerous passed pawn, but already your king is not able to infiltrate. So we cannot go g5. So okay, white the way in which white holds this is not that difficult after all, but you do like fear for a bit, at least here in the starting position. But the main trick is that yeah, if you play correctly, there's no way for black's king to infiltrate. Yeah, it's hard. Black has to play accurately now. What did white play? White played f4. That's dangerous. That's a bit more loosey-goosey. I don't like that. King f7. And what did he play now? Rook f2. Okay, if king e6, I guess we're walking into f5. King f6 would be my question. Yeah, king f6, I feel like it should be played. I mean, okay, also just rook b8 or something. Yeah, again, the question is like, how are you going to make progress? Because after this, yeah, I don't like the computer suggestion so much of f5, g5. This feels again dangerous. I don't want to allow black to make this pass pawn if I don't have to. Um, Again, I guess we'll just get this same old fortress because I'll just wait, and when to go h4, I'll go g4, and I guess that will get this fortress again. Yeah, I don't really see what black can do. The king has nowhere to infiltrate, even if you give it like infinite moves, and white's just going to shuffle the rook back and forth. It's curious that. Oh, interesting. There is a way to make progress here. Rook d8 and rook d3 no matter what, and you can't really stop it, and then rook g3. So like rook h3, rook d3. That's interesting. Computer still says this is a draw, but this already feels borderline losing. So I guess you have to really sharpen up. Okay, king f3. What is this? Oh, we'll just take here. Okay, I was getting scared for a moment, but because you cannot take here, I'll just go g2 and make it queen. But you'll just take on g3. Yes, and then this king f3 is kind of nice, and then we'll take and go king g4. Again, black has no way to enter. Um, sure. So maybe this is also just making a draw, but I don't know if white's gonna go for that. I feel like he's just gonna wait. But are we so sure about this? Are we so sure about this endgame? Like this one? I don't know why we are. I go g5 here. Yeah, what's happening? Oh, f5. Yeah, that's clever. Now you also get these two connected pass pawns. So we'll end up in some sort of mutual Zugzwang like this. Okay. Again, there's some things that white has to understand uh, in order to make the draw here. So after rook f2, Felix is still thinking. Let's see. Still no moves, it seems. How much time do they have left? I guess the transmissions times are also kind of delayed timestamps. Okay, so we have some moves coming in. Wait, we have a lot of moves coming in. So how come there's a rook on h2? Wait, I have to go back. Rook d3. No, no, no. Oh, he traded on f4, right? He traded, and then he went rook d3. Rook h2. And he's thinking, but he's reaching for a piece. So, rook f2. Wait. Rook f2. Take, take. Rook d3, rook h2. No, but the king's on f6. No, so this was the position, right? And now king e2. And now he traded and went rook d3, rook h2. And now he went to just c6. Okay, so I think this is our live position. and white quickly went rook h1. There's a rook on d8 as well. So this and this. Okay, so what's happening? Okay, still there's some practical problems for white. Yeah. Yeah, I still feel like this could be dangerous. Um, so black is gearing up to play rook b8, which would completely pacify white's rook. And one of the problems is that you can never really go e5 because I'll always go king f5 and start collecting the pawns. I was kind of wondering now whether can you go f5? Okay, but it's dangerous, right? But maybe it's playable. Not sure. Could it work? I guess rook b8 is just a good move there. Yeah, so I like this move, rook h2. And after rook b8, just move the king. You always have to watch out for some e5, g5s and stuff, but in general, like h5, pawn on h5 is also hanging. So yeah, rook h2 feels like a good move here. Rook b8, king e3. And there's still no way to break through. White is still thinking, I believe. No, he played king e3. And Felix played c5. Okay. Okay, I think he's just trying to flag him or something. C5 and yeah. I mean, it's some kind of a small Zugzwang, but because if you go rook h2, you can go rook d1 to tickle him a little bit. And yeah, I guess rook g1 is the move you have left. I'm not so scared of letting this pawn run through. I mean, it doesn't really have much support. And I'm also threatening e5 now. Yeah, at some point. I guess his idea could be to get in here. Well, that's something. Which will force white to play, at least think for a little bit. But this does not look wildly scary anyways for white because all these pawns are just falling. So yeah, rook g1 feels sort of natural. But with 2 minutes, any one of these variations could start to look really scary. Computer also points out this f5. Yeah, I'm not so fond of f5 in general. So rook g1 has been played. Rook to the g1st square. Yes, the rook has infiltrated into h3, so we are getting this line. But now, okay, rook g5. If rook g5 is found, um, I don't think there's too much of a fight left in the position. I could be wrong. Okay, now the check is forced. The pawn will get taken. White needs to take. I guess there's some amount of calculations to be had after h4. Because if you go pawn grabbing h3, could be winning. Is it? Probably not. But this kind of thing. It's dangerous at least. And actually rook c7 is just very clean. I wasn't seeing that move. But rook c8 also makes a draw. It's just that you can't really get back with the rook. Even there, you can probably go rook e1 and rook d1, but it's not ideal. But you can just keep on giving checks, and eventually you'll get to h7 if this rook c8. So I do think we're just going to head in this direction. I don't see what else we can do. Let's see what white goes for. Yeah, rook g5 was played, the check was given, the king went to f3, it seems. Felix is reaching for a piece. He will take on b2. White will take on c5. There is nothing else to do. What else is White thinking about? He doesn't really have time to be thinking in the future if the present only contains one good move. Okay, I guess he's thinking about e5 and then e6 or something. Yeah, could be e5 and then e6. Or f5 probably makes more sense. Yeah, he's probably thinking about this. Take, take, king g6. Maybe White's thinking about some stuff with the pawn. Yeah, but okay. Rook c5 is just very clean. I doubt that it's. I doubt that it won't get played. Yes. I think he took on c5. Let me just see the last move. I think Felix offered a draw even. Yeah, I think Felix offered a draw. Okay, we just got the draw. Okay, guys. So that's going to be all for me today. Time to grab some dinner. And tomorrow will be the last round. I mean, yeah, like 15 minutes or something. Yeah, I have. I have like okay. I have already done that. No, but like